Good morning, and again, welcome online to our e-sermon service with the church planner for Niceway Congregational Church on the last Sunday of January 2021. Can you believe it? Next month we're into February and we're hurtling towards Easter, and then before you know it, it's Christmas again. I'm going to read to you Mark's Gospel, chapter 1, reading from verse 21 to 28. Here is the word of God. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he being Jesus, entered the synagogue and taught. And they were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. And then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him and said, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him, departed. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching? With authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. For some people who don't believe in God or don't accept every aspect of the Bible, or who don't believe in hell, the concept of demons doesn't sit well. And when we mention demons, people often think of two things: Hollywood or Hammer House of Horror. And an image is portrayed of a demon who is a dark figure, or he's holding a three-pronged fork, a trident. And of course, he's maybe now the popular image is red from top to tail with yellow burning fired eyes and a forked tail. That's an image of Satan or of a demon that some people conjure up, and that's based upon images of old which were propelled to our TV screens, particularly with Hammer House of Horror movies. But in some ways, demons are all around us. Some say the big demon just now is the COVID virus that's affecting all our lives. But there are demons, not those intent on demonic possession, but those demons that are within us, inside us. For some of us, it is our own insecurities and inabilities, our own self-esteem, worthiness, and our abilities to do things or not do things to people's expectations. And for others, it's those moments when we cannot control ourselves, or there's things that we can't do that we can't control. Perhaps we're being pushed to the absolute limit by someone and we eventually explode. The demon inside us is unleashed. Now, whether it is our own insecurities or succumbing to temptation due to the lack of willpower or losing our temper, they are what we would call our inner demons. And I think most of you would understand what an inner demon would mean. I'm sure that most of you have already begun to think about your own inner demons. Let me help you. Are you the type who gets jealous if someone shows someone other than yourself attention? Particularly a close friend of yours, and they start making big about someone else they haven't seen for a while, and you suddenly feel like gooseberry at the party? Or are you the kind of person that gets really impatient about things, whether people don't start things when you want them to do, don't rehearse when you want them to do, don't do things the way that you want them to do it at the time that you want them to do it? Are you the sort of person who always likes to be right, even sometimes if you're wrong? And if you're challenged by someone and they have been proven to be right, you absolutely hate being proved wrong, and it's just a life's a misery for you. Or perhaps, and this is a very familiar one for many, perhaps you're a person that holds a grudge. You need to look at yourself in the mirror and answer that one truthfully. Perhaps you're a person that holds a grudge, and at every opportunity you can find, you seek revenge on those who you have perceived have done you some wrong. Either way, we all have our inner demons. All of us do, in some way or form. We all have those characteristics that signal to others and to ourselves that we are flawed and that we are far from perfect. There's not one of us, including myself, who are perfect and without flaw. It's a sign of our humanity. We are a flawed creation. After all, we were expelled from the Garden of Eden by God because of our flaws. Now, the demons inside this man in the Gospel this morning were biblical demons of the Hollywood kind, but the more enlightened among us accept the view, at least I do, that the man may indeed have a psychosis of some sort, that he may have been schizophrenic or epileptic, or he possibly had some other sort of mental illness. But the point of this story is not about that man and his illness. It's about Jesus and his authority. Let me explain. I think there are two types of authority. I think there's more, but I'm going to concentrate on two types of authority. One that comes with power, such as a serving police officer or a judge, and one that comes naturally through charisma, through kindness, through empathy, through patience, through respect, and through then leadership. And I've seen all kinds of people wield power over others, but they had no authority to do so. I've also seen people who have got power and who do have authority equip others to have a personal authority. They've delegated their authority rather than retain it, and they've empowered people to find a new talent within themselves. But people like to give away responsibilities quite often. Authority is a strange beast in the wrong hands, and I'm going to give you an example of this. It was a story that I shared with one of my online friends, a Canadian minister. They call him Pastor over there, and he shared this story with me many years ago. I think probably about 20 years ago, but I can still quite vividly recall it. Anyway, he was telling me that he had been sent to this church. They have a sort of strange setup. They have like a praise band minister type, where it's a music minister, then they have a pastor, and they have a senior pastor, a senior minister. And it turned out to be that when this guy arrived, it was his job to build the congregation, to build up the church. And the senior minister started to spread untruths about him, hurtful rumours about him and throughout the congregation about him and his family. And people were becoming confused within the church. Some were becoming distressed, and some were talking about leaving the church. And my friend went on to tell me that he discovered that there was a same pattern that occurred with other ministers that had preceded him. In the midst of growth and in the midst of stability, rumours would begin, and it would seek to undermine the pastor. And what do I do? He said. What do I do? I think it was like a sort of rhetorical question, but I also think he was looking for some guidance, and I suggested them to him. And I kind of think it shocked me that my suggestion to him was that that he should confront the person in the presence of his leadership in the church, because this person had a history. So it would be known to people they had just abdicated their authority and put the head in the sand. And let your senior pastor know that this behaviour was not appropriate for people who were called to be servant leaders. And tell that person that because they're unhappy with his vision as the pastor of the church, although not the senior pastor, tell them that if he's not happy with the direction of the congregation, that perhaps he should seek to find a different congregation to go to. Now, as it transpires, this senior minister had been with the church for 34 and a half years or so, and so for 3 decades the church had been dealing with problems. Well, I would actually argue that the church wasn't dealing with the problems, but that's another story. These problems persisted throughout the church, through the rumour mill, and instead of lovingly confronting evil in the life of the church, and as a result, all energies, all had been turned inward to fighting and blaming, and the church had long ago ceased being in mission. About 15 years ago, my friend and I caught up again online, and he is actually still at the same church. He's a senior pastor now, and he continues to preach the same gospel. But there is a difference. It does appear to have authority. The reformist Martin Luther once said, "When the gospel is preached, devils are set loose and start to roam amongst us." I wonder if it is that we preachers have lost our nerve. We've lost our voice. That we've listened too long to what is politically correct, that we no longer know the sounds of the gospel. Could it be that this story embarrasses us? Well, yes, it does, because for 30 years this church dealt with a problem. The 30 years this church buried its head with a problem. And I know many churches that bury their heads with problems, and when you then start to confront it, you are all the bad people. But it has to be done, because the church that you stand up for and protect is not the building. It's Christ. It's God. And I've always said to my congregation, church first, which means for me, God first. Could it be that this story embarrasses us, makes us think? Perhaps so. Not so much the demons and the confusion, that the fact that anything transformative happens at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, for goodness sake. But in our gospel reading this morning, Jesus enters a synagogue and begins to teach. What's unusual about that? Well, he's the son of a carpenter, and we reckon that he was to trade a carpenter himself, being the son of a carpenter, following the family footsteps. He's not recognised as a rabbi in the church, in the community. He's not recognised as a rabbi as we would recognise. We would ordain and accredit a minister in the Christian church, and he is not a scribe. For them, he's just another person walking through the community who enters a synagogue. But he enters, and immediately he begins to teach with an authority that seems to come so naturally, so natural in fact to him, that those around him are astonished by his prowess, his authority, and it's not misused. It is put to good use, relieving a man of his pain, of his suffering, of his distress, and allowing to lead a normal life again. It is Christ's authority, his charisma, his divine humanity that is on display. He's not there to condemn or shy away or retreat from someone who is different to him or different to those who he associates with. And that authority is recognized in the gospel by those demons. The very demons recognize that authority. They recognize his divine authority, and they recognize where his authority stems from. He didn't tell them. He didn't promote his ego. He simply spoke words to the man possessed, and the man perhaps with an illness of the mind. But either way, Jesus spoke and it was done. You know, in Genesis, God spoke and the earth was formed. In John's Gospel, the Logos, its opening line, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Word is extremely powerful and used in our Gospels usually to mean something positive, especially in our New Testament, the good news. In this last year, I've witnessed where people surrender their authority over themselves to fear. They have relied on tabloid newspapers and opinionated television presenters for their take on the news of the day. They have succumbed to their fear spread by words spoken to coerce a crowd to rage a riot on a nation's capital, or on social media platforms. They have allowed others to control their thoughts with false information on 5G network transmission, mask wearing, witch doctor cures, and vaccine myths. Folks, listen up and listen up well. If you are one of those people who has been following these peddlers of misinformation, you're relinquishing your authority over your own mind to these people, and their demons will become your demons also. Do not surrender control to them, for in doing so, you're giving them the authority. No one can bully you unless you give them the authority to do so. The authority by burying your head in the sand is this church that I gave you an example of, done for 3 decades. So this morning, I'm asking you to cast out those demons in your life, those demons that you know about, that your close family and friends know about. Follow those who are out to empower you, to encourage you, those who wish to promote hope, not fear, and turn your life over to the one who has called you, and come and follow him. He said, "Come and see, and come follow me, I will make you." There is a lot to be thankful for, and there is still hope in the world, and as each week passes, there are more signs of hope. And let me just remind you, I've seen that with the little crocuses, or croci, appearing in gardens just now. Spring renewal. God is wonderful. There's hope in this world. Do not let the darkness of your or other people's demons overcome that hope. Let the light in. Until next week. Amen.